All right, guys. I was looking forward to this combo. You guys are both pretty animated characters, so I was looking forward to this one. It's good energy. I like it. Thanks for doing this. And I usually like to start like from the beginning, right? Like, so give me some backstory, some history on how you got into the trade.
So how I got in the trade, I needed a job, and I applied at APS. I went down to their headquarters several times in my old pickup truck and bugged them until they pulled my file out and I got a meter reader job.
Why'd you choose APS though? Like,
my dad had worked here.
Okay.
And he did pretty good.
So there's some family history.
Yeah. So I got a meter reader job. I stayed there for a couple of years. And then I got into I thought, well, I'm going to work for the power company. I might as well do something with power besides meters. So I'll get on a line crew. And my brother was here, and he has already finished with his apprenticeship at that time. So my brother and I and my dad both worked here.
That's all the family that you had that worked in the industry? Cool.
And then so I went through that apprenticeship, topped out. I was out in Sun City area. That was my...
What year did you top out?
In 92.
Okay. Okay.
So Sun City area, and I just thought, this is it. I'm going to be here the rest of my life. And it's like 99% underground out there. And I was like, I got to do something different. And since my wife is from Flagstaff, I didn't want to move to Flag, but I thought I could do Cottonwood because it's exactly right in the middle between Phoenix and Flagstaff. And I called her one day. I saw a bid on the board, called her. She said, that'd be fine. That'd be great, right? It was so easy. And so we moved to Cottonwood, and that was 31 years ago. And, I basically started my journeyman career there. I wouldn't count the first year or so out there, but a really good variety of work there. Hiking in the mountains, mini pad farms, overhead, everything. So good experience. And then I became a foreman, and that was a whole nother level of something, and started to become good at that after a few years. It was tough to start with because everybody was older than me, and that's kind of a hard place to be.
It's kind of flipped now, right?
It's flipped. Yeah, I'm the oldest guy now.
All the foremen, though. Well, not just that point, but all the foremen now in these days are like younger than the older guys. Are like working for a younger foreman.
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty normal now. Where in the past it wasn't like that, but that's changed quite a bit.
What did you have a favorite aspect of the job or favorite part that you enjoyed? Did you like being on the tools, or did you like foremaning more? Or like...
I actually had a hard time transitioning to foreman because I wanted to do the work. I like doing the work because it's really satisfying at the end of the day when you look at something and you say, hey, I did that. So there's actually a dip hole out here along the freeway. When you come off the freeway to come to this building, there's a 750 dip there, and I look at that every day because I built that with some guys that are long gone when I was an apprentice, and it's still there. The same terminators are on that pole, and it's kind of a good feeling to have when you drive by there.
Always like those ones that you drive by and you're like, okay, I'll point those ones out to my kids. Like, I built that one looks good. But then there's that one that you go by every day that you put up in the middle of the night, and the sag was off a little bit. And you're like, I don't want to claim that one. But every time I drive by it, I know that I was up there. It's like, oh, you never end up back on those ones again.
Yeah.
Cool. How about yourself?
So I started, what brought me to APS, I'm a transplant, number one. So I've been working with the company APS now for coming up on, I guess, 7.5 years now. So I used to work for a different utility, Vista Utilities in Spokane, Washington. Before that, I was an inside wireman. So I got my journeyman electrician inside wireman ticket. Did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then ended up getting an opportunity to go to a utility. I used to think all the time. So I'd see linemen like you guys all the time, and I'd be like, man, that's where I want to be. I have a dream. I would look like this. That's where I want to be. I want to be one of those guys. I wanted to work at a utility just for the stability, right? I worked construction, so like there were peaks and valleys in the construction, right? And so I spent 1 week laid off throughout my apprenticeship, and that was it. But that kind of threw a little scare into me. So I wanted to go somewhere stable, and utilities were stable for that. So got into utility, went as a residential meter utility worker. So basically a guy who's exchanging meters on the houses as they break. Got into the journeyman meterman technician role, apprenticeship, and did 3 years in that. Came out of that, I love that. I still love metering. I used to go to houses and I still do it to this day. The mathematics about it. Okay. Like one thing I learned through my apprenticeship was, what in the world? Like stuff I was learning in the 10th grade, actually has like a value somewhere in the work. Like you used to, all of us been to high school and you're like, when am I ever going to use the Pythagorean theorem, right? You're like, I'm not going to use that. And then sure enough, I have to use that, right, to calculate metering and actual load that's coming through, right? Yeah. And so that was one of the things, and I like math, so that was one of the things that I kind of gravitated towards. That and the interaction with people. I like to interact with people. Yep. So meterman, you have to go to the house, be up there with the person, go through their house sometimes doing high bill complaints. And so I really liked that portion of the job, was doing that. That being said, you're a lot of windshield time, so a lot of time to think, and you're by yourself, those kind of things. And I have a lot of songs stuck in my head from all the radio I listened to while I was driving from job site to job site. But I then decided I wanted to get into leadership while I was there. So I went into a training program, took about a year. I interviewed every leader in the entire company all the way up to the CEO. We had projects that were due, graduated from that. I became the foreman of my shop after that. So a short period of time I served I was still a working foreman, but I was in the field for maybe a year and 2 years.
Why leadership?
Because you can make an impact. That's why. That's my only reason why leadership. It's definitely not for the pay. I would have stayed in my truck if it was for the pay. But leadership gives you the opportunity to solve things for people in a way that you just don't get when you're driving around in your truck by yourself, or putting up that pole that was sitting up there, right? Like what did Darrell say now before we were talking? I know it's not on your podcast, but we were talking before, and he said, that he wants to make a difference. He wants to leave something behind when he leaves. That's how I feel with leadership, is I want to make an impact, and I like building cultures, right? And you can do that from a leadership perspective. Is
that something that was built into you? Is that always the way you've been, or is that something that you kind of acquired through doing the job and realized that?
No, I've always liked to solve problems and build things, construct them, finish them, fix them. Like I have constructs. Anybody remember those constructs? Yeah. I used to love playing with construction. I thought I was going to be an engineer. I don't have the personality to be an engineer, right? But I've always liked to fix things.
You're definitely
for
a people person, right? So that's not really.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Engineer. Thank you.
Sorry, engineers. That's a dig on engineers. Linemen and engineers don't. We got this little thing going on. It's like not really.
Yeah, for sure. Linemen. Engineers, electrical engineers, and electricians, same thing. Yeah. They used to tell us stories. Basically, they're like, "Well, I'll tell you a story real quick. Sorry, I'll tell you a story." So. One time I'm doing a pipe rack, and I'm looking at the prints, and I'm looking up, and I'm saying to myself, that's a I-beam. That's a steel I-beam. And I'm looking at the prints, and the pipe rack is going where the steel I-beam is. And I'm like, these guys should have 2 years of field work apprenticeship before they go do the 4 years, because I'm like, how am I supposed to do that? Right.
100%.
How am I supposed to put a pipe rack of 3-inch pipes through a steel I-beam?
And they'll tell you to do it.
And they'll be like, yeah, you can do it. Or they'll like, oh, go underneath it. And I'm like, yeah, but you put the HVAC right stacked on top of the I-beam. So how do I get this through, right? So yeah, engineers and field workers don't usually go together. And sometimes I think, hey, part of that should be, you have to come out here and see work is real, not work as imagined that you drew it. Because, sometimes you draw something that's not feasibly possible for us to do, right, in the field. So yeah, so that's kind of my path. That's where I've got. Coming to APS, I came here to be a meter technical specialist. Did that for a little bit and realized I still wanted to be in leadership. And so I got into leading the group of B servicemen, we call them here. And then I moved from B service over to meter tech and ops after that. And I spent about 3.5 years there because I still have a passion for metering. I still want to help in metering. And then I moved over to safety. But during that whole path that I've just told you about, like I served on multiple safety committees, both the joint safety committees at Avista between the union and the company. We had a joint safety committee. I was the chair for the meter department and their safety department. And I've kind of always just, because it's fixing something, right? It's solving something that has an impact that's real on people's lives. Mm-hmm. And so that's what kind of gravitated me to this role now that I have. And it's kind of my passion that I have now.
Interesting. We're just, that question I asked before we started the podcast, I'm going to ask it again now. So what's like on your guys' mind lately? What's a pressing subject that you're thinking about?
Well, I just think about like this last year, there was kind of an uptick in fatalities across the, whole country.
Yeah.
And so that kind of really bugs me at night. But, I just always talk to our guys about the small stuff is what gets you in trouble. And so I'm totally emphasizing that all the time.
What do you call that method?
The simple stuff that kills you.
KISS method, remember? Just
keep it simple, stupid. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
for sure.
But and just leaving, I'm close to retirement, so I just want to give back to the linemen and make things better for them. It's my job, the way it's structured. I'm like their voice. So it's fun to be that person.
What are we missing right now? Like, what are we getting wrong? Or do you have like a theory on like why maybe some of these accidents are happening, or like what are we not paying attention to?
I really don't have any idea. Yeah. It just seems very, things are going great and then something really silly happens. And it's like, when on the back end, you're always looking at it and you're like, what just happened? How could this happen? But we don't know what led up to that. So that's the hard piece. You don't know what was going on that day. And it could be, something mental. That's really becoming a big issue with people's mental state when they come to work, because this life is really complicated anymore compared to the way it was 30 years ago. We worry about a lot more stuff.
I had this little thing I was messing with my brain about, like this onion theory is all I could come up with because I'm not incredibly intelligent. But I think that if you peeled the layers back from an incident, it's not very many back before you run into some form of a mental health issue that put them in the situation where they made a decision that made that incident happen. Ultimately, I know there's some accidents are just accidents and it wasn't a result of like somebody's decision, but like I just think it's so important right now. And like if you really look at the way the state of the world is, like there's a lot of stuff happening right now. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that I think are struggling right now, mental health wise. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a big reason that it's causing some of these things. And you can almost see it. I haven't studied this or I haven't graphed it or charted it, but like you can see incidences go in waves sometimes. And then if you relate that to like what's going on in the world or what's going on in the country, or I don't know, I just think that there's a big correlation between the two. And I don't think that an incident is far off from a mental health problem. I don't know. That's my theory on it. Like, yeah. I think it's just as much as like as simple as somebody just coming to work with other things on their mind. Like, I'm not talking mental illness either. Like, I'm just talking like, yeah, you're struggling with like, a couple weeks ago was pretty rough for the country, right? Like, what does that do to everybody in the country going to work the next couple weeks? Like, mm-hmm. Even if you weren't directly involved with things going on, it's still like, it's stuff that weighs heavily.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. What are the
I've had that on my crew. When I was running the crews, I had a guy that, from the time he got to work, and then maybe we were there for about an hour, well, he finds out his girlfriend is cheating on him, or his wife. I can't remember if they were married or not, but and then we had a hike in. We had to drive to a spot and hike a bunch of stuff on our backs to get to this job. And I told the rest of the crew, I said, hey, we're just going to let him go over there, be by himself. We're going to get this without him. He doesn't even exist right now on our crew. He is not here. So that was hard because one of the guys on the crew, he kind of had an idea what was going on, but it was his friend, and he didn't want to say anything to him because he wasn't 100% sure what was going on. So he was having a conflict in his mind too. And so I'm like, okay, well, we're here to do this. Let's just concentrate. We'll leave him alone. He can deal with that stuff. And so, yeah, that is a big, big deal.
It's tough to manage though, right? Because it is like dealing with people and emotions and things, but I don't know, we need better tools. That's all.
So one of the things that we're trying to do here, because those are definitely, everything you just brought up are definitely things that are happening, distractions, right? We can't stop those. Things are happening around the country, terrible things, right? People are dying. The industry, people are dying because of distractions, trucks entering work sites and killing 4 people. We're hearing these kind of stories in our industry, right? And they're just out doing their job at that time. Yeah. So one of the things we've adopted here at APS to try to help with that, it's not going to solve their mental issue, is we're real focused on high energy, and we're real focused on putting in controls and barriers, because we believe in HOP here. We're human organizational performance.
Explain that.
So human organizational performance is a way of building a collaborative and trust building culture with the people that actually do the work, right? It works on the premise that error is normal. So when you talk about, and everybody's going to do it, your best people, are going to, even on your best day, you're going to make errors, right? We're all human. To err is human. And so when you're talking about somebody's dealing with something, maybe mentally an issue that's going on, or somebody's distracted at work for whatever reason that may be, or they don't come 100%. We can't all show up 100% to work every day. And so because that we have to have controls and barriers in place so that we can fail and error safely, right? And then, you're building a culture. So how do you get people to recognize that? Well, you stop blaming and punishing people for when they turn things in, right? Because as an organization, that's why it's human and organizational performance, right? It's that. How do we become a high reliability organization? How do we become a learning and growing organization? One of the things I heard you say yesterday is meeting people where they're at. So that's another principle of this, meet people who are doing the work, right? Talk to them. They have the solutions. Yeah. They know the worker is not the problem. They're the solution to the challenges that the organization is having around safety and that they're having around safety. Okay. So then we start thinking about that learning is vital, and you got to be deliberate about that, right? So we need to talk to those people, and then we got to learn together, collaboratively, to fix the gaps that are there. Okay. And then what I always like, my favorite one out of the principles is that your response matters, because these are leadership principles. They're not principles for the inline user to use. The inline worker gets the benefit of all this, the good culture, the trust, the understanding. But they're leadership principles for you to be able to lead and guide a culture that will be safe, right? And will fix processes, and that your organization will learn holistically and improve, right? And so leadership response matters. And that your response isn't just when the mistake happens, how do you respond? It's okay, how do you respond? How do you fix? And then how do you communicate that out? And so that's one of the...
How do you do that?
So
what's your approach to that?
What's my approach to...
Well, what's leadership's approach to, how they respond, how they communicate back?
Yeah.
Because that really does matter.
Yeah. Context is one that we talk about a lot, because when you hear something that happened, everybody in the room knows the end result, and they work from the back end, and it's very obvious what's going on. But at this end, you don't know those steps that led up to that. So that's where, how you management's response matters, because they don't know the context in front of this. So they're starting to understand. They want to understand what happened, not here. Because when you look at it from this side, where it already happened, that's where the blame and punish thing comes in. You did that. You're bad.
He should have done this.
Yeah, he should have done this when he could have done that.
He should have zigged when he should have zagged.
Yeah,
should.
Yeah, of course
Yeah, but when you look at the context that leads up to it, it's no, I can see how that could happen really easy. So if that's a process or a procedure that needs to be fixed, we're you know what? We need to change our procedure here. Or this tool we've been using for 45 years, we got new ones that are better. and it will eliminate that possibility of, so there's always a good fix.
Do you have a process or a framework to like understand context?
Yeah, definitely. We'll do a learning team, and that's the guys from the field, and a lot of times it's the guys that had, whatever happened to them with, a whole bunch of other people in the room, and we just talk about what we could do differently, and then we'll do that for a time, and then we'll have some soak time, and we'll come back the next day when everybody's had a good chance to digest all this information, and then we go at it again. And that's where the good ideas come out, because you can't really do it on the fly. So when everybody's ironed out everything, you go to bed, you come back the next day fresh, and you've got a good idea, and then we get the ideas out there, and then we'll go from there.
When did you start this whole learning team idea?
Oh, probably 5-6 years ago. I know I was involved in one. We were probably a year down the road, but and again, this is back to human organizational performance. So we had Conklin come in about 7-8 years ago and kind of train and talk to our executives and get them on board. And then, it evolved into our culture, into our leadership culture here. I think yesterday, I hate the timeline. Sorry, I know we're on a podcast.
No, that's all good though.
When you were doing our foreman conference and you were doing a keynote speaking there, we were telling you I think you heard that through the panel section of how our culture has kind of made this shift here at APS, right?
Definitely
where it's visible, it's palpable, people can tell that, okay, they can trust the organization and we can work together to solve issues, not only in the safety space, but primarily in the safety space to keep people, alive is our mission. From serious injury and fatality, we don't want that. So working together to solve that. But also it permeates through the rest of our organization, just on our processes that we have in office work and engineering and so on and so forth.
Do you find that the learning team and the way that's set up helps build trust then between leadership and field?
Yes.
Is that one mechanism for helping build trust?
I would say so.
And what in there does that?
Just the participation of everybody together in one room, talking it out and listening.
How do you build your learning teams? Who constructs these things?
So we have a team of learning team facilitators. So we have here at APS, we have a HOP team that also does learning teams for the corporation, but T&D has also some facilitators that they've trained out. Okay, so transmission distribution has trained up some facilitators so that we can look at work even if there isn't an incident. Like, okay, what didn't go well about that? And so that facilitator will get the people in the room who do the work. You want that, number one. You might want somebody who's adjacent to the process or works in that process, right, in some way, shape, or form. You've got the facilitator, you've got outside eyes, you got a note taker. And sometimes, so when we started our journey, we didn't have leadership in the room at first. We've evolved and morphed a little bit as our culture got better and more trusting and more collaborative. Then we started to have leaderships kind of permeate into the learning teams and then start working together, coming out with good corrective actions that we can install to keep people safe.
It's neat. One of the reasons I pull on the thread is because not everyone out there that would be listening is necessarily a utility, but a lot of these big concepts and really great ideas come out of bigger utilities and things like that can learn about these things and deploy them. So for the contractors, even smaller contractors out there, they could form systems like this and develop their own little ways to look at near misses and things within organizations. I don't know, I've had quite a few people reach out at times and that was super helpful. I'm going to start putting that into my organization, even if they're just 2 or 3 crew outfit. It really helps them because they're typically not thinking about things like that. They're just trying to survive with a handful of people, but these sort of things matter. So it's a neat concept.
It's a really neat concept, and it builds a good culture where people can. They don't, you hear about bloody pocket syndrome, right? Because people don't want to turn in their incidents. There's embarrassment. There's, it hurts. it to tell the truth, you're going to get punished or you're going to get fired. Well, as you start using these principles and they get seen, that, you're not out to blame and punish, you're out to learn and improve. Your field employees, your employees in general throughout your company start to see that and feel that there's a shift coming, right? And an error happens and then they're like, oh, well, what happened? Tell me about that. Let's learn about that together. Like Darrell said, you start hearing about the context, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, geez, that could happen to anybody. That's one thing that's on a learning team panel too, is you bring in the people who had the incident because they have the best information, knowledge about what happened. They have all the context, right?
Yeah.
And so you bring them in, but then you bring in someone else as well from there, right? And that does the work, but maybe wasn't in it, so that person can go, oh, I can totally see that. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was at a job and something similar happened like that. So you bring in a peer that wasn't about the incident as well, so that they can kind of say, yeah, this is pretty standard. This is what we do. And there's some gaps here, right? And then it's interesting what you see comes out of that. And but first, when you get a flood of information, and usually learning teams will, so those of you listening, I don't want you to be scared of, like, when you start this process and you start down this road, you're going to start getting tested, and then you're going to start hearing things that scare you as an organization. But that was work as real. That's what's been happening while you haven't been hearing about it. And then you're going to start hearing about it. And that's why response matters, because now you can't freak out, because you should want to be scared. You should, as a leader, want to know what's actually happening so that you can fix, right? And that you can change and make better for your people. And so don't be scared off by that if you're listening to this and thinking you want to go down the road of learning teams and building these collaborative cultures with your employees, because they're going to tell you, once they start trusting you, they're going to start telling you what's really happening on every single job, what's really happening in the back processes in the offices that they've been covering up, because they're like, yeah, we can fix this now. They understand. They want to learn together.
So what's the most important thing as a leader then in these moments? Would you say it's like work as hard as you can to maintain the trust that you're building up? Because I assume it'd get pretty easy to start like pointing the finger, right?
Yeah.
Should have, could have, whatever, or you messed up, when you really got to like take a different look at it.
Got to hold back until you have all the facts. Because it's so easy to armchair quarterback on Monday morning, right? So that's the biggie. And once you have all the facts, you're like, wow, no wonder these guys, this happened. They had to hike straight up a cliff to get to this pole, because that's an easy job, and whatever they had to do, change an insulator, but hey, they had to hike 200 yards up this cliff face to get to the pole. They didn't just drive the truck up to it, put the stiff legs out and have the jib there and all that. So that's the context part. So wait until you have all the facts before you rush to judgment. And it's usually you'll find out that a communication error, or the guys were in a spot where they didn't have enough tools because they walked into a job, or, it's hard to get to. So they were driving the side by side and they left something back at the line truck, and it's an hour away. There's always some kind of little tweak in there that causes a problem. Yeah, you got to have all the facts.
Hop's fundamental belief, though, too, is like, these guys, everyone's out there doing highly complex, dynamic jobs, and they're making decisions left and right. Like, that's why we call it, there's work as imagined, like what you wrote down, what you planned out, right? What the procedure says. And then there's work as real, like what's actually happening. Yeah. The person walking up to you on the job, oh, they sent us out here with not all the right material. How are we going to, oh, by the way, job's got to be done in 2 hours. Oh, we're working along a roadside and there's a Waymo car coming into our job site, right? There's all those kind of things that are happening out there. It's not in the procedure. We don't have it in our procedure. Like, okay, Waymo car just drew, what, page 5? What is that? What is that, page 5? Right? No. So, those kind of things happen. And so Hop believes, like, error happens, install controls, learn about it, context matters, and then just response, right? Like, how do you respond to that? And how do you fix it? Because that's part of the response, is doing the corrective actions that fix it. And you'll see that your team members start, and this is going to be a big one. I think you wanted to talk about this too in here. I think you will want to talk about is what I meant to say, but is once you start building this trusting collaborative culture, you start seeing a lot more accountability for things and ownership. So if you're out there listening, you're in an organization on all levels, from
which is magic,
leaders all the way down to the people at the pointy end of the stick that are doing the work, right? At all levels, because you're together, you're trying to learn together, right? And so leadership starts noticing their gaps, what they have left, either not funded or not written down or not proceduralized, or time pressures they've been mistakenly putting on people. And then these people start to notice, because they're part of the solution, because that's everybody's just trying to do a good job, right? When things go wrong. So they start saying, well, let me help with that. And that's accountability is ownership, not, you can't hold somebody to be accountable. Like, they hold themselves to be accountable. And you, as a leader, you have to build the environment or the culture by which people will choose to be accountable.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. It's completely extreme ownership. Everyone's got to take ownership. Like, as if the workers on the pointy end of the stick want full visibility on what happened, so that they can avoid having the same mistake, then they got to have the trust of the leadership. They got to own the mistake, but they don't want to own the mistake because they think they're going to get pointed, the finger's going to get pointed at them, and they're going to get canned or something like that because of it. In the same way for the top, I love the way it builds trust, and it's a cool method that you guys got going on.
Yeah, and that with those learning teams, if something happens, on this side of the state, guys on the other side of the state, they know all about it because we have so much information gathered from the learning team. So the same thing doesn't happen on the other end of the state.
We're seeing more and more of this too. Like, I love the shared visibility, right?
Yeah.
And not just within an org, we're seeing it now, like within like different organizations, sharing across organizations. Like Qantas sees this now quite a bit with like sharing info with PG&E, and PG&E sharing info back like on incidences that have happened, so that they can just learn and get better. Which that's what the whole industry needs happening, right? We need to like share what's going on across the whole industry, not just within one org too.
So what's interesting about that is we belong to EEI, and they're working real hard in the high energy space, and Matt Hallowell and CSRA, and what's happening is we're taking all those, we're classifying and trying to learn as an industry, right? Apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So there's one methodology to classify across all these companies across the United States, right? Yeah. That have adopted this methodology. And so what's ending up happening there is you're starting to see, okay, the exposures for the industry and what they are. Like, of course, all of us can say, high energy voltage, right? Like, all of us have that same thing we're dealing with. But there's a ton of other
layers to it.
Yeah, there's so many layers, right? There's so many different levels of high energy that are going on there. As far as suspended load, gravity, dropped items, cars 30 miles an hour into your job site. So the industry's starting to learn together, like you said, classifying things apples to apples, so that we can figure that out instead of one utility trying to figure out every single thing. There's like 65 utilities all trying to look at incidents, compile them together, and find out where the exposures are for serious injury and fatality.
I think it's huge, and if you really want to make a dent, you got to do it, because like, especially on the contracting side or the union side, like, linemen will work on the East Coast one day, and the next day they'll be on the West Coast. So why can't we work the same way as organizations? Like shared information across the board. It's super cool. What do you wish you knew? Like, as far along as you are in leadership now, what do you wish you knew back when you kind of first got into it?
Everything.
That's a toughie.
And I'll elaborate. I'll say, everything from a perspective of like, I wish I knew the hot principles when I first started in leadership at my last utility, right? Now I've always kind of been like, I want to hear what's going on. Remember, I like to construct things together, or I want to hear all of the facts that I can. So I've always been like, hey, well, tell me what happened, because I was out there. So it's easy for us, I think anyways, when you move from the field in, when something happens, it's easy to go, oh yeah, I know about that because that happened to me, right? Or whatever. And so the context piece I've always had as a leader. For me, it was more of the, I wasn't a hammer kind of leader. I still aren't to this day. But I wish I had spent a little bit more time in the beginning with my people in the field right after, because I think I came in and I was like, okay, I'm going to start changing things for you, because I knew we had a roadblock in between us, right? There was us out in the field, and then there was the leadership, and it seemed like nothing ever made it past that level to make change for us as an organization. So like when I got into leadership, like I think I neglected the people a little bit more, because I was trying to break through this barrier that was at the top and make everything better for them.
Yeah, I never thought I would be a leader. I was ready to just finish my career out as a foreman. So I was having a great time, but not like in that kind of leadership. But the foreman's a leadership spot too. But I always looked at the foreman thing like a servant leader, because these guys are going to make or break you. If they don't like you, your life is going to be pretty miserable. So it's always good to my guys and never made them do anything that I wouldn't do, and treated them well. But then when I got into this position, that's right kind of when we were transitioning like big time into the hop stuff. And I came from we just came off the shame, blame, and retrain train, so to speak. And everybody was just, oh, what if something happens? We're going to get fired. So, no, we're not going to get fired. We'll be okay. And so we've been 5 years or so into the hop thing, and people are finally starting to realize. And then I've learned a lot too, because I wasn't exposed to that until I got into this role. And so, I guess there's really nothing I could have known until I got over here. So as soon as I came over here, that's when we started hitting that hop stuff pretty hard. Yeah. And it was new for me from day one. And I'm like, I kind of like this, because this actually can move the needle instead of just repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Like 3 years later, the same accident might happen. But, we're with the hop thing, we're kind of nipping that. It's not going to happen again.
That's awesome. The reason I pull on that thread and I ask that so much because of those new leaders. Like those are usually the ones that listen to the show as well, right? And they're always like searching for those little nuggets of things, like from the more experienced people. Like, what can I grab onto right now? What can I start applying right now? Or like, I talked yesterday during the keynote about being like self-educated on the topic of leadership, right? Like you should be a lifelong learner, and leadership is a practical skill that's learnable. And like, if you learn it and apply it, you will get better at it. It's like, but a lot of that comes to you having the responsibility of teaching yourself, or getting into rooms with leaders, or, courses or whatever it is. So like, that's what do you have any other advice for those guys that are just coming in? Like, might want to look at this, even if it's books, man, like anything. Oh,
so I do believe leaders are lifelong learners. So the reason why I didn't bring that up is when I went through my mentoring leadership class, they were like, you should read 10 pages a day. You'd be able to get through a book a month on leadership. And then you're going to get nuggets out of each book that you read. But advice I would give to a new leader is immediately, obviously take care of your people and be there for them and supporting them, but immediately start like your own little mentoring program. Start interviewing other leaders that are around you, right? Getting their information, because say they've been doing the job, they're a leader, they're a new leader right now, and you started 2 years behind them. They're gonna have information about, yeah, man, this is like drinking through a fire hose, and here's what I tried to do to combat it, and here's what you can watch out for. And they're gonna have stories about a situation they handled that you're gonna run into, right? And then so having that experience to draw from, that's what you're trying to get out of the books, right? Is drawing experience out of the books. But if you have that available to you, and this is for you new leaders, where you can go out and interview 6, 7, 8, new or leaders that have just been around, experienced leaders, everything.
It's like build your own little mastermind
Yeah.
community.
You're going to get a vast set of information quickly, right? You know, in a 1 hour interview, you can get a lot from a person, half hour even, to set a meeting with them. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's deadly.
Yeah, I talked to a few of our dock leaders and stuff, and when I got into this, we were just coming off the COVID thing too, and we had all these online leadership classes with the teams. And it was like super boring. I mean, that was not my thing. So I did a lot of YouTube videos, and that Simon Sinek, who you like, I learned a lot from that guy.
Yeah, that's
so
100% what I was trying to say yesterday too. Is like, we'd be silly not to learn from those big dogs in leadership, because like, just look at collectively the material that they've put together on the topic of leadership. It's insane. If you actually like I said, Maxwell himself's got like 50 books on the topic of leadership, right? So you'd be silly not to take advantage of those guys and like what they've collected and distilled into like,
in those 50 books though, how much research went into those 50 books? So you're just getting more than just reading everything that person times however many authors you have. So I'm a big proponent of that as well. Ryan, is leaders are learners, and you're learning every day, right? Every day. I work in operations as a leader. Your phone's constantly ringing, and you're learning how to put fires out and stretch yourself, and knowing how much capacity you can take, and knowing when to load the boat and call on people to help you with situations, and go through like what we call here, risk-based decision making. When you're making a decision and you're weighing like all the risks that go into that, and loading the boat with people, right, to help you make those good decisions. In an event, we can tie it all back to safety. Like if you're doing that, then, and you're building this culture, then, and your organization is learning and improving, then your people will have trust and want to collaborate with you, and then they will make it safe.
Yeah. Are you guys using any sort of off the cuff question, are you using any sort of AI to help you like filter through just incidences, or like help you come to conclusions on any stats or things?
Nothing right now. Yeah. I mean, we have the ability to load, like obviously if we load stuff in, we can say, hey, analyze this data, right? And tell us, what trends we can have.
But
we don't
have it. Come across any platforms yet that are helping for that?
We actually have an internal one that we're doing just for searching. Like, so you can, cause there's a lot of procedures out there, a lot of information, we call them sticky notes or newsletters, safety newsletters or whatever, so that people within the organization can use our safety AI assistance tool, and then they'll be able to say, hey, tell us, what are the rules around fall protection? And it'll pull from our APM. It'll pull from any incidents that we may have had. Here's what it says in the APM. Here's been some old, incidents that have happened. So you can read up on it and say, okay, well, that's kind of what I'm doing. Here's some corrective actions I can go with, right? And you can, so it's kind of in a beta testing mode right now for us. But it's something our leaders can use if, they're doing a safety meeting and they just want some extra information for that safety meeting.
I heard something the other day, like I study some business and stuff like that. So a couple guys in the business space, Maxwell being one of them, obviously he's an intelligent businessman as well. Dan Martell was another one. I had a quote up yesterday from Dan Martell. Martell's got he calls him a head of word. So they take everything that Dan says in all of his content, all of his keynotes, everything that he says, his phone calls, his business calls, gets recorded, transcribed, and put into AI. So now he can go back and analyze any stories that become impact, anything that any topics that are repetitive topics that he knows a lot of things on, get pulled out and turned into new book ideas. And I just think that concept, a lot of time, you could take those ideas from like business and then like apply them to anything, right? You could apply that to safety, like data surfing and scraping, like things that we might not catch as human beings. AI could maybe catch these things as like trending things and point it out and go, hey, this is a thing we're seeing on repeat that you might not be catching. I don't know. I think we got to think different. I know it's playing in a realm that's like really, some people are playing in that realm of AI right now and really getting nerdy on it, and some people aren't. And I think this industry it's time to get nerdy on AI.
Yeah. Well, one of the things they are getting nerdy
in
on
the safety sphere and in the safety spectrum, though.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the things that is getting nerdy on here in the safety sphere. We have some digital tools that we're kind of looking at going with, and some of those tools have like AI hazard identification of the site. So you scan the site, the AI says, here's a high energy source, here's this, that. It's a little bit worrying for us. So again, like utility space, you're like, do you want me to listen to the Terminator, or do I need to know exactly what I'm working on, right? Yes. And so it's being tested around the industry right now that I'm hearing at some of the conferences I go to. But there are utilities that are using AI in that function. Yours is a little more advanced.
Well, no, it's the same sort of thing too. I've like thrown out those ideas of like imagine if you had something like a meta glasses or something that your lineman could wear, and they could be on the job site and it's seeing what you're seeing. But then it's like a little R2D2 coach, that could also talk to you, say, hey, because there was an incident not too long ago where it was a storm called, lineman just came down, went back up to throw a guy wire on or something like that, or go hang a switch or something, and then ended up getting into trouble. He didn't have his gloves on, forgot to put his gloves back, his rubber gloves back on, and he got burned from it. But like, imagine having a little coach that's saying, hey, you're going up in the air, you don't have your gloves on. Like,
it's like a little birdie
just
on
something. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway,
I love it.
It's getting nerdy, but like, I just think this industry's slow to move on a lot of things sometimes, and it needs to get quicker on some of these things. So
it'll be another barrier, right? Another control or another barrier in place to keep people safe is what I think. So that hopefully the industry starts moving a little bit faster in there. But.
Luke Skywalker still had to fly the jet, right?
No, R2D2 took care of all that.
All right.
Now it's getting nerdy.
Give me an example of when applying HOP principles made a real difference on the job site. You got an example of something recently that...
I would say that, just something simple, the FM tag that we just did. So we have during fire season, we've identified feeders that are really, if something goes haywire, it's going to start a fire. So we put those on one shot.
Yep.
And they have a special curve for the fire mitigation, which is different than a contact tag. So we were just hanging our regular tag in there for when we do,
Sure.
And one of the guys up in Flagstaff, one of the troublemen, he goes, we need to have a tag that identifies this recloser as being in fire mitigation, because a lot of them, doors closed, you got to go open the door and look at it and see if it's on fire mit setting or the contact tag setting. And so why not have a tag that's easy to identify? Cool. And he didn't know what to do about it. So we went to the HOP team, and they were able to totally see that project all the way through. And it didn't take very long. It wasn't 2 years. It was 3 months, and we were done with that. And we got the tags right before fire season started. And we got the communication went out. Everybody knew what it was about. And it was really pretty seamless. So that was a super good win. And it's something really simple.
That is impressive, because stuff like that would have, like you said, could have taken 2 years to get that approved and
move through. We had a situation, I'll give you an example. We had a situation last year where we had an individual ended up having a contact, right? We went through, instead of you weren't doing what you're supposed to be doing, 3-day DMS or suspended or fired, one of the two, we said, well, hold on, let's find out what happened, right? We went through our process of let's find out what happened. Let's learn about that. And then what we did was, because we wanted to find the context, we went around asking people who do the same thing. It's those gloves are real cumbersome. So a lot of times if I can avoid it, let's see, these are the things you start hearing when you're building this kind of culture.
Yeah.
If I can avoid it, I will, right? But at the same time, it's we need to hear that.
That's the language you have to pay attention to.
It's the language you have to pay attention to. Sometimes we call it dark humor, like, but what we ended up doing is we ended up finding out from the group, they're like, yeah, we would really like a different glove, right? That would allow us to do our work still without these challenges that are placed in front of us. So we kind of took that information. We went searching, Darrell went searching and got some thinner gloves that we could use, had a lot more dexterity, different covers. And now, again, back to what I was telling you earlier about, it's about building a culture through your HOP principles where people will choose to keep themselves safe, right? Where you make it convenient to be safe, where you make it easy to be safe, where you make it easy to talk, to tell you what's wrong so that we can work as an organization to fix it. And then people will choose and they will take ownership, because I tell people this all the time, all the way up to my executive team. I say, no one wakes up in the morning and says, you know what I want to do today? I want to tear my femur in half today and not be able to walk for the next 6 months, or lose my 4 fingers and not be able to play the guitar. No one wakes up like that, right? Everybody's trying to do a good job, and something happens either because there's a gap in the organization, or there's a gap in the procedure, or there's a distraction that happens where we didn't have as an organization or as people control or a barrier in place to prevent that from happening or to mitigate it, right? Yeah. So that's a success story, I feel. It came from after an event, so that's unfortunate. But if we learned as a organization with our people about what was really happening, and then sought for a fix, found something, and we'll see that should take hold.
Oh, love that. You guys have another cool program we were talking about the other night, the safety coach program. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
Okay. Well, so when I was, I'll back up a few years. When I was being a foreman, I was out on a job one day and my phone rings, and I'd known about the safety coaches because they used to come and visit the crews, and I get a call from the leader that's in charge of the safety coaches, and he say, hey Darrell, have you ever thought about being a safety coach? And I'm like, no, I haven't. I've got the dream team here. I've got my, after 30 years of doing this work, I got a crew that I really enjoy being around, which is super rare. It's always one guy on your crew. He's okay, but you're not really the goalie. It's not that cool. But so I thought about it for a while, and I thought, well, it's not permanent. It's a commitment for a few months or a year, and then I'll be right back to my regular job. So what the safety coaches do is they'll go around to a crew, and they're hand selected by the leader, and they'll go to a crew and they'll spend the entire day with them. And a lot of our crews are really young, including the foreman. And so the safety coaches are guys that are seasoned, they're really well respected, they've got a good safety record, and they'll go and help these guys, and they'll work with them all day, see what they're doing. If somebody somewhere else is doing something different, they can bring that to them. And then also like any kind of pertinent company information that they're going to miss, because everybody's got a built-in excuse to not look at email, right? Because a company has their own phishing program, and they'll kick you off the computers if you get caught too many times. So we'll bring that information to them. But it's about, you're going there as an equal and talking to your buddies and saying, if you see something they're doing something wrong, they may not even know it, that they're breaking a rule, and it gets taken care of right there in real time. And they're like, hey man, thanks. I didn't even know that was a rule. So that's super good. And then traditional safety, it's like, safety guys here. And everybody's just like, they either run, it's like squirrel hunting. There are squirrels everywhere until you have your gun with you, right?
Yeah.
So, or it's come on over here, and it's just a big session of who got fired, and did you hear about so and so, and then they leave after 45 minutes of non-production, right? And you didn't gain anything from it. So the safety coaches they're working because they're gathering that information out of the field. And then, so in my new job, I took the safety coach supervisor job because the guy that called me retired. And so we had a guy fill in. He was there for a few weeks. It wasn't his thing. And he went back to the tools. And he makes a lot of money now, like a ton. Because he's in charge of all the Sky Harbor stuff at the airport. So I thought, this is my chance. So I bid on that job and got it. And I thought, I'm at the end of my career. I'm going to move the needle for safety and make it better for my guys. So the hardest part of my job really is picking the right guys for the job.
Right.
And we get them for about 6 months at a time.
How do you do that? Like intense interview process?
I'll just look at them. I'll ask peers, and I get an idea of a guy's name, and I'll ask around. I say, what would you think of this guy? My current coaches, I'll ask them, what do you guys think of this guy? And they're like, yeah, they like him. Everybody likes him. And he's super smart. He's been around a while, and that makes a good coach, because they have a lot.
Why reputation is so important.
Yeah, they have a lot of autonomy too with the job, because we give them a take-home truck, and they start their time as soon as they jump in the truck in the morning, and they'll go out and find a crew somewhere and just stick with them the whole day. And then the whole day, when they're talking, and they go to lunch or whatever, that's where all the good ideas come out. And they're like, hey, while you're at it, why don't you talk to your leader about this, because we don't like this process. And so we get a lot of good information out of them.
How do you measure the success of the program, and like how do you make changes?
For me, I just look at what kind of wins we've been having. Mm-hmm. So we've had a lot of material issues in the last few years, and that's unusual, because in the past, new meant good, right? New doesn't mean good anymore. New means I better check this out before I put it in service, right? So we've had some material issues that have actually been pretty unsafe. We had some dead-end clamps, 18M dead-end clamps that the wire was pulling out of. And we just started researching that, and the engineers are like, we don't buy that brand. I don't know where those came from. And then finally we figured it out, and it was a substitutionary thing. And we got them off the shelves. And then company said, we'll do better, so we'll make them, and we went and tested them, the safety coaches. We tested them in a press, hooked a couple of them back to back, pulled them to destruction, and made sure they would make the 18,000 pounds. So those are wins for the guys, because we actually lost a pole because of those things. And there was guys working on the pole. They were in a bucket truck, and the pole started breaking, and it was like an action movie. They just like boomed out of the way just in the nick of time, and the whole thing just went. And that was like, we got to do something about this fast. So those are the kind of wins we're getting with the safety coaches, because they're talking to us. Yeah. We're getting the feedback out of the field. Normal activity for linemen is throw it in the garbage and get another one, and the company just keeps buying them over and over and over again. So with the feedback, it's great.
I think you saw some of that yesterday in that panel you heard yesterday. Like on that panel there was 3 safety coaches that are still foremen in their roles, because after you leave that, you usually go back to your foreman role. And them mentioning that's how they didn't know until they became coaches, like how impactful it is for the rest of the field people, right? The rest of the linemen out there benefiting wholly from the safety coach program, because they're now hearing about things they didn't hear before, because we now have this communication method, word of mouth, which is the preferred method of communication with linemen, that and text messaging, but they're working. So you got that person right in front of you, so you can have interaction, right? And talk. It's not just information being fed to you and then you never hear anything back, right? And Darrell, he's had a pretty good mission around, like, he set his mission to give them the best, make this the best lineman possible with the most up-to-date information, right? So that they can do their job safely. And so Darrell also, with the safety coach program, he extends that out to, our designers, our CPRs, our engineers. Cool. And so those safety coaches go out and meet with them where they're at, like you've talked about before, and it's like at their trainings, and say, hey, this is what you should be looking for. This is what causes the guy on the other side problem if this isn't done right. So real value add to the trainings from the safety coach program to our designers and engineers, right? And then we go to safety meetings with those engineers and we tell them about the new equipment. Darrell has done road shows. The safety coaches will go around and do road shows for docs on new equipment, right? Or equipment that maybe, you don't know this about Darrell, but he likes to take things apart, completely scrap them down to the nothingness, right? Figure out how it works and then put it back together and then do a video about that out to everyone, so they know about that tool. He gets real deep into the finding those things out. So when he tells you he got the new material and he tested it, like he's testing it and he's calling the manufacturers like, hey, this thing failed at $17,999. Like that's when it went. Okay, close enough, but let's look at that manufacturer's rating. And so when you ask us, how do you measure it? I think you measure it when you're talking to those guys and you see them on the panel and they're telling you and they're telling their other peers and their foremen how important it is and what they learned about what the safety coach program does for everyone, right? And then, we measure that too by people who want to volunteer. As you start building this culture, people start volunteering. They're like, I want to be a safety coach, and then you start building this culture around how do we peer-to-peer safety, is way better. Safety with you, not at you, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of how I
love how you even call it a coach, right? Like, and that's something that I think the industry could take note of. Even in like schools, teachers or instructors, those aren't coaches. Like coaches are different. Coaches are there with you. Like, let's figure this out together. Teachers kind of are as well, but like instructors, you think of like military, like just do this thing I'm telling you to do, right? But really you're more of a coach, like a mentor, So I like that aspect of it.
One of the coaches, he was a lineman, but he went out with the electricians. They have a portable sub that they take around, and they had the 750 underground wire that they use for the leads, and they were using the same wire over and over and over again. And he watched them hook it up, and they're getting ready to energize it, and he goes, hey, wait, you guys aren't going to high pot that? And they're like, well, we don't have any way to do it. And he says, you're kidding me. You guys just use that every day? You roll it, So that was like a shock to him, because everything we do, 750 wise, we high pot. Yeah. Or even the 1/0s now. We're starting to go down into the, high pot and the run of 1/0 now when we put it in. Because new doesn't necessarily mean good anymore, right? So these guys are like, well, we don't have a tool to do that. He goes, yeah, they make these cool battery-powered high pot tools now. You don't have to have a source. And so they got one, and that totally changed the whole thing for them. So there's all kinds of, small things that happen with the coaches that are just nuggets of good stuff.
How have you seen we were just talking about this on the last pod as well, about apprentices though, how like apprentices are good for linemen because they ask a lot of questions. It forces the lineman to be sharp as well and respond and have like an answer, right? So it's actually like, as good as it is for linemen to help apprentices are actually helping linemen too by keeping us, up to speed. So the same thing kind of goes with the safety coaches as well, as like you're kind of forcing conversations now on subjects that you might not be talking about, right?
Yeah.
And forcing you to look into them and think about them, and I don't know, it's just different. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's a good program.
It's working well. And then the guys also have a lot of procedural questions, and we have procedures that are buried in our computer system and nobody knows how to find them. Except for a few people, right?
So the coaches will bring that in, and then we'll find it. And then the most important thing is the coaches will take it back out and answer the question.
We'll get them an answer in black and white. Here is the rule, so you guys can read it for yourself. Yeah. Because it's always like, it always gets lost in translation. Yeah. Well, I heard it was a little bit different than that. And so when those questions get asked, the guys get answers. Instead of, I'll get back to you, and
fades off in the sunset.
Yeah, it never happens. I mean, that's the way the old thing was. If you ask the hard question to safety guy, he'd like, it's time for me to go. I'll see you guys later. Enjoy your Gatorade or whatever I brought out to you.
your free squincher.
Free squincher.
How do you see the next generation of leaders carrying hop forward?
I think it'll be even better.
I think as we continue to learn and improve and evolve, like, you're going to see it's permeating. I go to a lot of conferences now, and it's probably about half of the industry is even believing this. There's still a lot of people around like, oh, you got to hold people accountable. You got to punish them. He didn't follow the procedure, right? He's got to be accountable, fire him or suspend him. And you're going to find like it's about half of the industry is on this path. Either they heard it from Shane Bush, or they heard it from, Todd Conklin, or they heard it from Andy Baker. Like it's coming, right? And the future, I think, is in this space. Like we've been able to change our culture significantly in a relatively small amount of time, is what I tell to people listening to this podcast that are leaders. Like relatively, I mean, we're 120 something odd years old, right? Maybe a little bit longer than that, and in a relatively small amount of time, 7 or 8 years, we've been able to change our culture to where people feel like they're safer, And so, like, for those of you who are cynics or skeptics out there that maybe listen to this, like, oh, that's soft. Hop is being soft on people, and we need to hold people accountable. Just give it some time, right? We've been doing it the other way a century or more. Like, give it some time. And in our organization, literally, like 5 years, we've been able to turn our culture. Now, we're not perfect, obviously. We have our gaps just like everybody. But if you ask anybody that's here at our utility, they're going to tell you we're in a much better space than we are now, both from a metrics perspective, if you want to look, and a feelings perspective than we were 7 or 8 years ago. And so guys like this, who have been around for 40 years, they've really seen the differences of that in the culture. So,
one more question for you guys. What do you want to, you've mentioned a little bit of what you kind of like want to, do this last few months, years, whatever you got left. It's coming to an end. What do you want to leave for the next generation? Piece of advice?
Gosh, a lesson I learned early on as a foreman is think about your words before you say them, because you can't take them back, especially if you got somebody on your crew that you think is kind of porking you. And I got a great example of that when I wasn't a foreman for very long, and I had a couple of young guys that had just topped out, and we were discussing a new polymer insulator that we got, and we're like, well, how much side strain do you think that thing can take? And I was like, well, I'm going to have to talk to our designer guy. He's really sharp on that. It'd probably be a week before we heard from him. So one of the guys, and this is a long time ago, so I'm dating myself. Cell phones had just started to have like internet on them, right?
Whoa.
And one of the guys, this young guy, he's over here, and I thought he was playing a game, right? And I was like, all right, I'm not going to embarrass this guy, but I'm pretty ticked off right now. And he goes 30 degrees. It's right here, and he looked it up. He got the brand name, looked it up, and I was like, man, I would have looked like such an idiot. So if you're in that position, you need to hold your words back before you say something and get to the context of what's going on. That was a big lesson for me, because I was ready to pounce on him,
Solid.
And I was gonna take him behind the line truck and say, hey man, when we're having a tailboard, you need to stay off your phone, okay? It's not game time.
Solid advice.
Yeah.
I know you got some years left, I'm sure, but what's some advice for this next generation?
Next generation of leaders, like, just understand that, people are going to make mistakes. I revert back to the hot principles. Like, people are going to make mistakes, and you need to figure out how you can learn and help them through that. You're supposed to be there anyways. As a leader, you're supposed to be supporting. So I would say for those leaders, just understand that mistakes are made, support your team, learn with them, and then respond accordingly. Like, help them. That's what you're there for. Leadership is about supporting and lifting up others, and those people that you are in charge, to serve. And like I heard Darrell mention servant leadership. Being a servant leader is one of the most rewarding things you can do, right? Because you are the steward of those people and the processes and serving them in that. They're not, I know you're their leader and they're supposed to be working for you, but in reality, you should be serving them. That's what I leave with them.
100%. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks for having us, man.
This content is completely free. All right. The only thing I'm asking you for is to hit that subscribe button. And I know it's cheesy. I know it's corny. I know every YouTuber asks you to hit that button and you're probably sick and tired of it. But if you like the show and you want to see the show grow, this is the way I prove to the people in charge that it's worth investing in. So it's pretty simple and it's the price you can pay for me. It's no money. It's just a subscribe. Please hit the subscribe and I appreciate the heck out of you for it.